Right now, a car company is losing $39,200 every single time someone drives one of its vehicles off the lot. Not the sticker price, the loss. They sell the car, and they hand the buyer roughly the price of a second car for free, hidden inside the books. That's not the only warning sign flashing across the industry right now. One brand's entire American lineup is down to a single model. One brand's best-selling SUV just got banned by federal software law because it's built in China. One legacy brand just had its real internal sales projections exposed, not by a press release, but by a lawsuit. We're starting with the mildest warning sign on this list and climbing straight toward the brand that's losing money on math alone. 8 brands, real numbers. Let's count up. Number 8, Subaru. The Subaru Outback sold more than 3 million units over 3 decades in America, building one of the most loyal customer bases in the entire auto industry on a single, stubborn promise. It would always be a wagon, never quite a sedan, never quite an SUV. Something distinctly its own that nothing else on the road resembled. For most of those 30 years, that loyalty was Subaru's single biggest competitive advantage over every rival chasing the same buyers. That promise broke in late 2025, and the breaking point traces back to a decision that had nothing to do with the Outback itself. Subaru discontinued the legacy sedan, the platform the Outback had been built on since 1994, leaving the Outback with no foundation to inherit. Freed from that constraint, Subaru redesigned it from scratch into a conventional midsize SUV. Taller roofline, squared-off nose, a starting price roughly $5,000 higher than before. Owners noticed immediately, and they didn't hold back. One longtime owner posted directly to Subaru's own forums, "I am truly disappointed. A loyal fan base that has followed you for years with countless repeat customers, and confirmed plans to switch brands entirely at their next purchase." Marketing analysts studying the backlash didn't call it ordinary product criticism. They called it identity rejection. The sales data backs up the anger, even if the damage so far is survivable. Outback sales dropped 42.9% in March 2026 alone. Subaru has now posted 9 consecutive months of year-over-year declines, with March's overall brand numbers down 23.5%. Only the Forester is holding the line, hitting record sales for 3 straight months, while almost everything else sinks around it. But Subaru is still moving hundreds of thousands of vehicles a year overall, which is exactly why this sits at the mild end of the list, rather than the dangerous end. But losing your identity is recoverable. Losing your own numbers in a courtroom is a different kind of problem entirely. Number 7, Audi. Audi didn't announce this number. A lawsuit did. In December 2025, a Long Island Audi dealership sued Audi of America over unfair dealer margin programs, and buried inside that legal filing was Audi's own internal sales projection for 2026. Roughly 144,000 vehicles. Compare that to the 228,550 vehicles Audi sold in America back in 2023, and the math is brutal. That's a 37% collapse in 3 years. And if the projection holds, 2026 would be Audi's worst American performance since 2012, erasing more than a decade of growth in a single 3-year window. Audi's official response insisted the figure only reflects one narrow dealer category, not the company's complete sales picture, but chose to make that clarification through a spokesperson rather than getting ahead of the story themselves. The decline isn't concentrated in one weak model either. Audi's core SUV lineup is bleeding across the board. The Q3 down 27%, the Q5 down 19%, the Q7 down 12%, all in a single year. Only 3 models posted any gain at all, and just one of those gains, the Q6 e-tron, was large enough to actually matter against losses of that scale. Even at the projected 144,000 units, Audi would still be selling roughly 4 times what Lincoln moves annually, which is exactly why a bruised, embarrassed Audi still ranks well behind genuinely existential threats further down this list. When a brand's real numbers only surface because somebody sued them, that tells you something a quarterly earnings call never will. But a brand can survive an ugly number. It's much harder to survive watching your own lineup quietly disappear. Number 6, Genesis. Genesis was supposed to be the rare good news story, The Korean upstart that out-executed Lexus and Infiniti by actually listening to what luxury buyers wanted. For years, that story held up. It stopped holding up quietly, one discontinued model at a time, with almost no press coverage tracking the pattern until the gaps became impossible to ignore. In August 2025, Genesis quietly pulled the electrified G80, its only electric sedan in America, from its own website, with no announcement, no press event, nothing. The company later confirmed to journalists that 2024 was the model's final year in the US, after sales had collapsed to just 77 units in the first half of 2025. A flagship electric sedan, refreshed and ready with a longer wheelbase and a new OLED display for 2026, simply never arrived here at all, even as that same updated model went on sale in Genesis's home market. The G80's electric sibling wasn't the only casualty under discussion. Industry reporting now suggests the Genesis G70, currently the brand's third best-selling model with over 12,000 units sold in 2024, could be discontinued entirely after the 2027 model year, as the broader market keeps abandoning sedans for SUVs across every price bracket. Genesis insists there are no current plans to kill it. Companies facing that exact question rarely say yes until the decision's already made. And a brand watching sedans and EVs vanish in the same 18-month window is not a brand projecting confidence about either category. What keeps Genesis off the dangerous end of this list is simple. The brand's core SUVs are still selling well, and nothing here is a revenue catastrophe yet. It's a pattern worth watching, not a five-alarm fire. But patterns like this rarely stay contained to just two models forever. The next brand isn't quietly retreating, it's bleeding real, immediate revenue right now. Number 5. Volvo. Volvo lost nearly a third of its American business in a single quarter. U.S. deliveries fell 32% in the first quarter of 2026, dropping from 33,285 vehicles to just 22,651. And the damage wasn't spread evenly. The XC60, Volvo's bread-and-butter SUV, cratered 37%, falling from 12,706 units to 8,061 in a single year. The smaller XC40 fared even worse, down 47%, suggesting the bleeding has spread well past one aging platform into the brand's entire entry-level strategy. Part of that collapse is simple aging. The XC60 platform is approaching a decade old, but the bigger problem is price. New tariffs on foreign-built vehicles pushed the XC60's sticker price up by roughly $4,000 over the past year alone. And Volvo's answer is to start building the XC60 domestically in South Carolina later this year. An admission that the only way to survive in America is to stop being imported at all. Globally, the picture isn't much better. Volvo's combined sales fell 11% in the same quarter, with China down 17% as domestic competitors out-engineer and outprice the brand on its own electrified strengths. Free cash flow turns sharply negative, even as Volvo insists its upcoming EX60 electric SUV will turn the tide once deliveries begin this summer. The crucial difference between Volvo and the brand still to come is that Volvo at least has a concrete funded plan already underway. Domestic manufacturing, a new EV launching this year, rather than just hoping the bleeding slows on its own. A premium brand can survive one bad region for one bad quarter. Volvo just posted a bad quarter in both of its two most important markets simultaneously, while raising prices on the exact buyers it's losing. But having a plan still beats what's coming next. A brand racing an actual legal deadline with nothing built yet to beat it. Number 4. Buick. Buick's American identity now rests almost entirely on one imported SUV, the Envision, built in China, with 41,924 units sold last year alone. That number used to be a quiet success story, the kind of steady volume seller a struggling brand builds a comeback around. Now it's a liability, and the timing could not be worse for a brand that had already retreated almost entirely from sedans to make this exact SUV its center of gravity. The same federal software ban threatening Lincoln's Nautilus applies directly to the Envision too. GM has announced plans to shift Envision production to the United States by 2028. But that leaves roughly 2 full years where Buick's most important SUV remains legally exposed to the exact restriction already squeezing Lincoln. Unlike Volvo and Polestar, which import EVs and could pivot production relatively fast, Buick is stuck with a gas-powered SUV built specifically in the country the law is targeting. Buick has survived close calls before by leaning entirely on China-built, budget-friendly crossovers while quietly retreating from sedans altogether. That strategy worked when nobody in Washington cared where the software came from. It stops working the moment that becomes the entire point of the regulation. Unlike Volvo, Buick hasn't announced a firm timeline or domestic facility for the Envision specifically, which means the brand is currently running a 2-year countdown clock without a publicly confirmed plan to actually beat it. A brand whose comeback depended on exactly the manufacturing decision a new law was written to stop isn't positioned for growth. It's positioned for a deadline it didn't choose to start, but a countdown clock with no plan is still better than a brand already failing 2 crises at once. Number 3, Lincoln. Here's something most Lincoln owners don't know. Their best-selling SUV, the Nautilus, is built in China. That was a quiet manufacturing decision nobody thought twice about, right up until January 2025, when the U.S. government passed a federal law banning connected car software systems built in China from operating on American roads, specifically over data collection and national security concerns. The Nautilus runs straight to that ban. Unlike Volvo and Polestar, which import electric models and could shift production relatively quickly, Lincoln's gas and hybrid Nautilus has no fast path around the restriction. Owner complaints had already been mounting before the software ban even surfaced. One buyer publicly canceled a Corsair order specifically over removed park assist feature, while others openly questioned whether Lincoln's recent price hikes still match what the brand actually delivers. The brand is now racing against a regulatory clock to either move production or lose its single best-selling model from American showrooms entirely. That regulatory threat is landing on a brand that's already shrinking, which is exactly why this sits worse than Buick's version of the same problem. Lincoln's annual U.S. sales have fallen below 100,000 units, astonishingly small for a brand still carrying the full overhead of dealerships, marketing, and a separate corporate identity from Ford. Industry inventory data lists Lincoln among the brands carrying the highest days of supply in the entire market right now, sitting in the same overstock company as Chrysler, Mini, and Jeep, brands already flagged as circling the drain. Buick at least has the broader weight of General Motors behind it. Lincoln is fighting this exact same legal threat with a fraction of the sales volume and far less room for error. A luxury brand whose best-selling vehicle could become federally unsellable, sitting on lots nobody's buying from, is not a brand with a 5-year plan. It's a brand hoping nobody asks the obvious question out loud. But even a compounding crisis like Lincoln's still has multiple models to fall back on. The next brand doesn't. Number 2, Fiat. In 2012, Fiat sold nearly 44,000 vehicles in America, riding genuine momentum from its relaunch as a quirky, affordable alternative to mainstream compacts. By 2025, that number had collapsed to roughly 1,500 vehicles total, a decline so steep it makes almost every other brand on this list look stable by comparison. Fiat's entire American presence right now is one car, the 500e, no 500X, no 500L, no gas-powered 500. Fiat killed that in 2019. Just a single electric hatchback alone, holding up an entire brand's reputation in the largest car market on earth. And even that one car is collapsing further. Fiat sold just 15 units of the 500e in January 2026, a 91% drop from the 174 units sold the same month 1 year earlier, the moment the federal EV tax credit expired and took the brand's only real discount lever with it. Fiat's plan to fix this is genuinely the strangest rescue plan in the entire industry. The Topolino, Italian for Little Mouse, is a 2-seat electric quadricycle topping out at 28 miles per hour with a 47-mile range, built to be classified as a neighborhood vehicle rather than a real car under U.S. law. President Trump personally called it really cute during a White House meeting with auto executives, which is either the strangest endorsement or the most honest one any struggling car brand has received in years. Unlike every other brand on this list, Fiat isn't trying to fix its core lineup. It's replacing the entire concept of what its American lineup even is, betting the whole brand on a vehicle that legally can't leave a 35 miles per hour neighborhood. A brand that once sold 5 distinct models in America is now betting its entire future on a vehicle legally restricted to side streets. But even a brand reduced to a golf cart isn't losing money on every single unit it actually manages to sell. Number 1, Polestar. Polestar sold 60,119 cars worldwide in 2025. Its best year ever, up 34% from the year before. The company's CEO called it a record year in a press release, with revenue surging past $3 billion for the first time, and the sales network expanding to roughly 250 locations globally, up from 154 just 1 year earlier. Here's what that press release didn't lead with. Polestar's total losses for that same record year hit $2.36 billion. Divide that loss across every single car the company sold, and the math lands on roughly $39,200 loss per vehicle, meaning Polestar effectively hands every buyer a loss larger than what most Americans paid for an entire used car just to get the Polestar logo onto their driveway. Every other brand on this list is losing customers, losing models, or losing legal battles. Polestar is the only one mathematically losing money on the exact thing it's supposedly succeeding at. The company points to improving adjusted EBITDA as proof the underlying business is genuinely getting healthier. And the trend line does show real improvement year over year. Geely, Polestar's Chinese parent company, has stepped in repeatedly with fresh capital to keep the lights on through multiple debt-to-equity conversions in recent months. Financial maneuvers that keep the brand alive, but don't change the basic arithmetic underneath it. Selling more cars at a steep loss isn't success. It's a controlled burn, and someone with deep pockets has to keep feeding it fuel. A brand that loses more money per car than most competitors' entire profit margin isn't scaling toward sustainability. It's scaling toward the exact moment its parent company decides the fire isn't worth feeding anymore. 8 brands climbing from a brand bruised by its own customers all the way to a brand that loses money by definition on every single sale. An identity crisis, a lawsuit leak, a quiet retreat, a real revenue crash, a countdown clock, a compounding crisis, a brand reduced to a single toy car, and a brand where the math itself is the warning sign. None of these problems show up on a brochure. All of them show up in the data if you actually look. Which one shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, that's exactly the kind of channel we're sticking around for.